Operation Golden Lily, sometimes referred to as Yamashita'S gold, is among the most disputed and shrouded intrigues of the Second World War, in which the Empire of Japan allegedly plundered a number of treasure troves. The operation presumably included the looting of gold, precious gems, cultural artifacts, and other treasures of value from subjugated regions across Southeast Asia, such as China, Malaysia, Singapore, the Philippines, and Indonesia. The operation reportedly was conducted under the auspices of the Japanese royal family and military leadership, with Prince Yasuhito Chichibu, brother of Emperor Hirohito, leading the effort. This was not opportunistic plundering, but rather a part of a well-thought-out strategy to attain wealth and finance Japan's war efforts and imperial ambitions. By the end of the war, with the Allied forces closing in on all fronts in the Pacific, the Japanese began to enter the plundered treasures in a network of vaults, especially in the Philippines. The said treasures have since then been referred to as Yamashita'S gold, named after General Tomoyuki Yamashita, who had been associated with its concealment. Since then, this treasure has been at the center of many treasure hunts, litigations, and conspiracy theories. It is a tale of war, treasure, secrecy, and betrayal that weaves figures together from the very pinnacle of Japanese power right through to post-war battles over what happened to the buried treasure. Operation Golden Lily, the mechanism of plunder. Japan's serious territorial expansion started at the end of the 1930s, with the full-scale invasions of China and Southeast Asia during World War II. The Japanese military extracted materials quite ruthlessly from the occupied territories to fulfill their imperial ambitions. This took the form of systematic looting in the banks, temples, museums, depositories, and private collections. The loot that was extracted included things as insignificant as gold bars, coins, and jewelry, to priceless cultural relics, religious artifacts, and works of art. This treasure reportedly was accumulated under a program known as Kin no Yuri, literally Golden Lily, a code name for the organized looting conducted by Imperial Japan. As Japan expanded its empire, initially it stored the stolen wealth coming from all over Asia in key locations such as Singapore. However, once the tide of the war began to turn against Japan, as Allied forces began key victories throughout the Pacific, the military knew it could not continue to protect this treasure. It is claimed that these treasures were slowly moved to the Philippines, which was still under Japanese control, to be buried with other hoards into underground tunnels and vaults, where it would be safe until transport back to Japan after the war. Prince Yasuhito Chichibu, younger brother of Emperor Hirohito, is often mentioned as the figure in charge of Operation Golden Lily. He reportedly supervised the building of elaborate ways of tunnels, bunkers, and caves all over the Philippines, where the treasure was said to be deposited. The building involved in these secret vaults employed Allied prisoners of war, as well as Ramusha, what refers to local Filipino civilians' forced labor. When the completion of labor was finished, laborers were executed in order to ensure that the sites remained secret. Fact or fiction? Indeed, it was in the Philippines that much of the treasure was said to have been hidden, and most of it has been associated with General Tomoyuki Yamashita, who commanded the Japanese forces in the Philippines during the latter stages of the war. His name became synonymous with this buried treasure, although little hard evidence exists that Yamashita himself had much to do with its concealment. Be that as it may, the myth of the so-called Yamashita'S gold, supposedly buried in the Philippines, has continued to enchant treasure hunters and conspiracy theorists for decades. The primary question surrounding Yamashita'S gold is if there was even a treasure at all. On the subject, historians and researchers remain divided. Some argue it does exist, citing eyewitness accounts of Japanese soldiers and civilians claiming to have taken part in hiding the wealth. These accounts are mostly fragmentary, but they point to many sites around the country, especially at Luzon, that were used for the alleged treasure. Others belittle the treasure as a myth, arguing that such concepts of large hoarded loot are an invention of post-war conspiracy theorists. The skeptics further argue that there has never been any confirmed discovery of any substantial part of the treasure, amidst the searches and expeditions to hunt down the treasure over the years. But the legend of Yamashita'S gold has lived on, at least in part because of the tantalizing prospect that such a fortune might still be hidden. The sheer scope of the alleged operation, the complexity of tunnel systems across the Philippines, and the brutal secrecy under which the operation was conducted make it impossible to definitively prove or rule out the existence of the treasure. Post-war controversy and the alleged US connection. Since the end of World War II, the Philippines has been one big playground for scores of treasure hunters who hope to strike it rich with Yamashita'S gold. Probably the most widely covered and followed case is that of a Filipino locksmith-turned-treasure hunter named Rogelio Roxas. Back in the early part of the 1970s, Roxas claimed to have discovered a portion of the treasure in a tunnel near Baguio City, one of the Philippines' most popular mountain resort cities. According to Roxas, along with his team, they did indeed stumble upon a gold Buddha statue with several accompanying crates of gold bars. The Buddha, according to Roxas, was hollow and filled with diamonds, adding, if true, to the already enormous value of the treasure. Roxas's discovery led to a dramatic turn in events. News of the find attracted the attention of Ferdinand Marcos, a dictator of the Philippines at the time, as Marcos was highly interested in this treasure, as he knew it could bring an immense boost to his fortune and power. Roxas was arrested shortly after it was discovered, tortured, and made to reveal its location. It is also said that the gold Buddha and the crates of gold bars were confiscated by the regime of Marcos, leaving Roxas with nothing. Roxas later sued Marcos in the United States on the grounds that the dictator had stolen the treasure. An extremely long and labyrinthine court battle ensued. Although Roxas died under suspicious circumstances in 1993, his estate won a landmark $22 billion judgment against the Marcos family. That ruling was scaled back after further litigation, however, and exactly how much the treasure was worth is ultimately not known. Adding complication to the story of Yamashita'S gold is the charge that the US government was aware of the existence of the treasure and may even have recovered some as part of a cover-up. Sterling and Peggy Seagrave are a husband and wife team of writers who have written extensively on the subject. They say American intelligence officers knew where the treasure was and elected not to reveal its existence and return it to the countries from which it had been looted. The Seagraves contend that a great deal of this gold was used to fund clandestine US operations during the Cold War with the collaboration of Japanese officials who were granted immunity from any prosecution for war crimes. While this is an interesting theory, due to several factors including the clandestine nature of intelligence operations and lack of hard evidence, it is for all practical purposes impossible to confirm. But if anything, that builds another layer of intrigue into a story that's pretty convoluted. Treasures and tunnels, how the treasure was hidden. The most intriguing feature of Operation Golden Lily involves tunnels and underground vaults, considering that the generally held belief is that the treasure was hidden in some sort of network. While hundreds of tunnels throughout the Philippines were constructed by Japanese military personnel, many more were built in mountainous regions such as Luzon. The tunnels were intended to serve not only as hiding places for the treasure, but also as positions to defend against a possible Allied invasion. These tunnels were built as a huge, inhumane project by forced labor from POWs and Filipino civilians. Conditions were inhumane, and many of these laborers died during the building process. In many cases, once one vault was completed, it was sealed with concrete, and after that, the laborers who had built it were executed to prevent them from revealing its location. The tunnels themselves were maze-like, many of them filled with explosives and deadly mechanisms designed to thwart any attempt to reach the treasure. Other accounts tell the story of whole sections of tunnels being deliberately collapsed to ensure that the treasure remained hidden. Putting secrecy together with violence and engineering has indeed made this treasure very difficult to locate even with modern technology. Despite many attempts to uncover the treasure, only small caches of gold and artifacts have come to light. The most famous of these was the discovery by Rogelio Roxas in the 1970s, but even this find represented only a fraction of the treasure believed to exist. Just how extensive the tunnel system was, along with the full extent of its contents, remains one of the great unsolved mysteries of World War II, the legacy of Operation Golden Lily. The legend of Yamashita's gold and Operation Golden Lily has continued to fascinate treasure hunters, historians, and conspiracy theorists alike. For some, it is a tantalizing chance of discovering a lost fortune. For others, it is a grim reminder of what Japan committed during World War II. The operation itself is symbolic of the complex and brutal nature of war in the Pacific and the way it is linked with military strategy and imperial ambitions, in which there are ample parts that human suffering can play. Another long-standing effect of the mystery of the treasure on the Philippines is at hand. Many Filipinos believe that vast amounts of gold remain buried in the mountains, with the search for Yamashita's gold being a kind of national obsession. The possible involvement of the treasure with Ferdinand Marcos, and later the legal battles between him and the prospectors, further complicated the story and entangled it with the political history of the Philippines. Historically speaking, Operation Golden Lily hefts a big burden of questions as to what wartime plunder and its aftermath are all about. This is a case of an operation that requires systematic theft of wealth from some of the poorest regions in Asia that has never been returned to its rightful owners. Because of that possibility, some of this treasure was used in order to finance the post-war order in East Asia. There is a need to analyze the larger context in which the said treasure existed. Japan's wartime expansion and looting. At the outbreak of World War II, Japan was engaging in an aggressive expansion into East and Southeast Asia, sometimes referred to as the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere. This was driven by the expansionist policy of Japan in the region, and partly out of necessity to feed its war machine. Japanese forces, which went on a rampage through China, the Philippines, Malaysia, and Indonesia, pillaged fabulous wealth in gold, jewelry, and other priceless cultural artifacts. This was done as part of a carefully worked out scheme to finance Japan's military campaigns and planned future imperial ambitions. Part of this treasure was shipped directly back to Japan, while much of it was collected under the Golden Lily operation, a scheme led by Prince Yasuhito Chichibu, a member of Japan's royal family, to hide the plundered treasures in secret locations throughout the Philippines. According to numerous accounts, this treasure was buried in a network of underground tunnels, caves, and vaults, usually constructed by forced laborers under brutal conditions. With the turning fortunes of war against the Japanese, particularly with heavy losses in the Pacific theater, Japanese leaders scrambled to secure this treasure. It was the threat of an Allied invasion of the Philippines that had led them to bury much of that treasure there, hoping it could be unearthed in some future juncture, either following a victory by Japan or in some post-war period. Yamashita's role, the Tiger of Malaya. But of all the figures most associated with treasure, there is perhaps no better figure than General Tomoyuki Yamashita, one of Japan's most renowned generals who gained the nickname the Tiger of Malaya for his highly successful campaigns in Southeast Asia. On 1944, he was appointed commander of Japanese forces in the Philippines at the height of the Japanese military on the defense, and struggling to hold its positions against advancing Allied forces. Though Yamashita is remembered above all as a military figure, his name became indelibly connected with the treasure through legend and rumor. There's a widespread belief that he was directly in charge, or at least knew about the hiding of the looted riches somewhere in the Philippines. After the war, he was tried by a US military tribunal and executed in 1946 for war crimes. However, the connection of his name to treasure lived on to give rise to the popular term Yamashita'S gold. The treasure hunters and Rogelio Roxas. In the years since the Second World War, rumors of fabulous hidden treasures in the Philippines have driven myriad treasure hunters to seek out Yamashita'S gold. While some hunts were modest affairs conducted by local Filipinos looking to get rich quick, other expeditions have been mounted by international treasure hunters with many personnel and machinery that spend weeks digging through the mountains and jungles of Luzon and Mindanao in search of this buried treasure. Perhaps the best known of these was Rogelio Roxas, a Filipino locksmith who, back in the 1970s, claimed to have found part of Yamashita'S treasure. According to Roxas, he was told by a former Japanese soldier who provided him with a map detailing the location of an underground chamber near Baguio City in northern Luzon. There, he said, he had found a golden Buddha statue, along with crates of gold bars. The rapid discovery of Roxas soon caught the attention of the then Philippine president, Ferdinand Marcos, an authoritarian president who was already known for his obsessions with gold and wealth. According to Roxas, Marcos had him arrested and tortured to seize for himself the gold Buddha and the treasure. This incident led to a protracted legal battle between Roxas and the Marcos family, which resulted in one of the largest civil judgments in US history, awarding billions of dollars to Roxas's estate. However, controversies remain as to the exact value and authenticity of the treasure that Roxas found. US intelligence and Cold War secrets. Among the various other less than conservative theories on Operation Golden Lily, one includes the post-war recovery or hiding of parts of the treasure by US intelligence. Sterling and Peggy Seagrave, in their book Gold Warriors, America's Secret Recovery of Yamashita'S Gold, state that American intelligence operatives were aware of the existence of the treasure and made efforts toward its secret recovery. Figures that include Edward Lansdale are named. The Seagraves say the US government decided to use some of the recovered treasure for funding covert operations during the Cold War, including anti-communist activities in Asia. They say this clandestine recovery operation was one of the means which funded US involvement in the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and other Cold War conflicts, done in conjunction with aspects of Japan's post-war government. These claims are highly contentious and had been met with a great deal of skepticism from more mainstream historians. Though it is true that the US intelligence apparatus did play a great role in molding post-war Japan and other regions in Asia, there is little concrete evidence regarding the subtler claim that Yamashita'S gold was utilized as some sort of super-secret war chest by the CIA. But the theory adds a fantastic layer of intrigue to the story of Operation Golden Lily. Legal battles and continuous searches. Countless governments and organizations have, over the years, joined in the treasure hunting of Yamashita'S gold. The Philippine government has allowed, from time to time, the searching of the reported sites under different administrations, while private treasure hunters continue their quest for potential places across the country. Of all the litigations that concern the treasure, probably the most significant is the case between Rogelio Roxas and the Marcos family. Following his arrest and torture at the hands of Marcos's regime, Roxas sued the Marcos estate in a US court. In 1996, a Hawaii court awarded a staggering $22 billion in damages to his estate, later reduced on appeal. It was to become a symbol of corruption and excesses under the Marcos regime, although it also left many open questions about the nature of the treasure. Despite all high-profile court cases and continuing treasure hunts, no definite proof of the existence of this great hidden treasure has been found. Over the years, there have been periodic small finds of gold and artifacts. What has been uncovered to date represents a small portion of what was thought to have been hidden during Operation Golden Lily. According to many, the war lost much of the treasure in ships sunk by the Allies or buried in places no longer remembered. The ambiguous legacy of Operation Golden Lily. The legacy of Operation Golden Lily is complex and multifaceted, touching on issues related to war crimes, historical memory, and the intersection of myth and reality. If, as described by the treasure hunters and conspiracy theorists, the operation in fact existed, it would constitute one of the most extensive and systematic acts of wartime plunder in modern times. These treasures looted from Southeast Asia were not only symbols of wealth, but also of cultural and religious significance. Many of them taken from temples, museums, and private collections. The eternal search for Yamashita'S gold has left an indelible mark on the Filipino nation, which continues to grapple with spirits from Japanese occupation and Marcos dictatorship. This treasure, actual or fictitious, has served as a symbolic link to both hope and tragedy of some promised wealth, yet to the brutality and greed that compose so much of the 20th century as well. But in the end, Operation Golden Lily remains one of those mysteries of history. While the treasures will probably never be fully disclosed, the story of Yamashita'S gold remains as a cautionary tale about the risks of unchecked power, the devastation of war, and the relentless attraction of hidden wealth. Thank you for spending time with us through Spookscope today. Feel free to share your knowledge and wisdom in the comments section, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share it with your friends and family. Until next time, my dear spooker, stay curious.